just trying to get a little more mark.
It's 9 o'clock, let's start the meeting with, so like I said, a moment of silence, please. First thing before we start, there is a sign-up sheet of the behind the sheriff, beside the sheriff, so if you've not had a chance to sign in, please do so on your way out. I appreciate it. Thank you. First thing we do on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Corrections, deletions, changes. I would like to know, we do have a public meeting at 9:15. If we get through the first 7 before 9:15, we'll probably keep moving down the list of our agenda.
I know I was approached by an individual that tried to be on ahead of that if he could, because he has another meeting.
I understand.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Public comments. We'll say that if you're here for the public hearing, there'll be a time for comments there. If you have anything else on the agenda you'd like to comment about before we proceed, now's the time to do that. Okay. Need to approve the minutes of May 15, or excuse me, April 15 and May 1.
I make a motion to approve the minutes, April 15th and May 1.
I'd like to have a mistake was here on the committee reports. It should say that power plants having trouble getting coal off the railroad. That would be the second set of minutes, I believe.
Or you'd like to read at the power plants instead of the railroad station?
Yes. Because the railroad can't get across the river with coal. It's a power plant that's not real.
Oh, you gotta unmute the oxys.
It's not a big deal.
We've got a motion on the table to approve the minutes.
As amended.
Not yet.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve them as amended. I'll pull my first motion back.
Go on your first motion.
Oh, I can't hear you.
I support that.
Okay, any further discussion?
The oxys are supposed to be those.
Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as corrected, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Oh, like we did before.
Jeff,
Yes.
talk about the bond purchase agreement, resolution 2019, 8 bonds. This is for the communications system.
Good morning, Jeff Heil, Northland Securities.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yes, pleasure to be here this morning. What we have,
There's marks.
as you know, we've been working on this for the last couple of years. Finally came to the point where we've got the contract and everything now.
That doesn't mean.
We went ahead and got the bonds marketed.
That's what I'm hearing.
You have a summary sheet there before you. We're gonna do
Hit it.
$4,565,000 with a net interest cost after all costs involved is going to be at 2.93% interest. When we looked at it back early April, we had projected about a 3.2%. And so going to the market, plus we had the rating reaffirmed. And so with the rating that we had done, we've got a 2.93. The thing that I did want to point out, we are going to be getting $4,857,000 in proceeds. We're getting $292,000 plus in premiums, which that means the banks are paying us a premium for the coupons. You'll see that we've got 4% and 3% coupons, but the yield on that second page is actually what we're going to be paying for interest. So they're giving us almost $300,000 up front. So you know that's proceeds you need that we never have to pay back in principal. So that's how we get back to the net 2.93%, locking in all the way through 2038. So any questions?
I know our consultant got a hold of you a week or two ago to come up with all the final numbers. Mr. Tatum and
Yes, I did talk with them and got those, and I know that was the same day these were out looking at some potential sites. We have, there's about 15,000 in here of leeway where you may have to buy a site or two for towers. So that does leave that, there's about a $15,000 extra cushion for potential purchases of a site or two for towers.
I think the bond is written, there's no pay ahead for the first 7 years, and thereafter,
That is correct.
the county's allowed to.
Mhm. Any other comments, questions I can answer? You have a bond resolution before you from the Dorsey Law Firm. That will give the authority to sign this contract. And then the other thing, what happens is in 2 weeks, on your next meeting, you'll have a loan issuance resolution that puts all of this summary into actual loan document. That's basically nothing. Today, if you approve this now, that locks it in. It's locked into the bondholders. The loan issuance is just a formal document from the attorneys. And then on June 11th, I believe, is when, yes, June 11th, the money will be wired into the county's account.
And we were hoping for by the 1st of July, we were borrowing against ourselves so we can balance the books for new fiscal year.
Talk to Sue, we try to get it so you, it gets balanced out before June 30th, so.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Sounds good.
If no further questions, we do need a motion to approve the bond purchase agreement resolution 2019 14A bonds.
I make the motion, we approve the 2019-14A bond for the purchase of radio equipment.
Support?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much. We do need that contract signed right away and attested, and I'll take it down because we have 1 hour to get it out to the MSRB world to show transparency to the financials of the world. So,
We're gonna have to do a little bit more tweaking.
and I think as I told Mark earlier, you know, when you get to work, finishing up with the county attorney on the fire station, I'll just help, you know, we won't have any other fees or anything to do on that one. We'll just help you through the whole process to get that done right. So-
Cedar Township. Yep.
so,
Sounds good.
He's got it on the map, so is it okay?
Yes.
This way,
That'll
to read them for now.
For now, because we'll just fax one, and then I'll leave them down, and then email all 3 of the originals with copies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Works for you. We've all seen the April bills, we need a motion to approve them.
I move to approve the April bills as presented.
Second.
All those in favor of the April bills payment, all those please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Deanne. Talk about using our courthouse parking lot for the sweet court serenade event.
Any other chair?
So July 25 is our annual Sweet Corn Serenade event. We have a little bit different setup this year. Mahaska County Farm Bureau is going to bring a few different things, the red rock threshers, a few other exhibits, and so we're kind of realigning some things on the streets and how we set up with the cattlemen's and the cooking. We will be using the electricity here in the alley, and so we're hoping if we could use the south parking lot here that the courthouse employees use to put our dumpsters, toilets, the cattlemen's need it for their trailer after they're done cooking. Sometimes we have vendors in the square that have trailers that need to park. If we could use it for that day, on that Thursday.
What time do you need it cleared out by, the vehicles?
Ideally, it would just be, and it would really only need to be the west half of the parking lot, cleared that whole day, and then we can talk to our, the business that provides those toilets to have them picked up before you have employees coming the following day.
So you're just
The
talking the
event
whole day?
starts, yes, the event starts at noon. The craft vendors will set up in that morning, the cattlemen start bringing their stuff ready that morning, and the corn cooker there. So if it would be easy if it was just all day, so we wouldn't have to find vehicles if someone forgets, oh yeah, I'm supposed to move it at a certain time. We can make whatever work.
In the past, have you had all that same way?
We have not used the parking lot in the past, but we are setting up differently because, yeah, we're having the Farm Bureau have a few more exhibits and they wanted kind of more, to be more visible, so having our tents along the side instead of blocking the street. And so we're kind of shifting more things along this street here as far as the cooking goes instead of in the corner on the street.
And so we wanted to maintain an appropriate distance between the food and the toilets and dumpsters.
So you're moving the grill off the street, putting it in the parking lot this year?
So they'll grill it there and then they might pull it in that parking lot, yes. And then same with the corn cooker, Byron always hooks his tractor to that cooker. Space-wise, we're not sure if we'll be able to keep it that way or not, but we'd have the parking lot, so if we do need to move it in there, then we'll at least have it.
We do say there times too, we use the parking lot for the events, where,
For one day, they just gotta walk a block, basically.
And it's not gonna rain that day, you know, decided, so.
Don't worry, they don't have a parking spot anyway. No.
I'll make a motion to approve the courthouse parking lot on July 25 for the sweet corn ceremony. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
See you guys. Don't be afraid to send us a reminder. Consider the new user agreement, shared area radio agreement, Sarah, 2080. Do you have anything to say about this, Jamie? Would you like to say anything?
No, I mean, it's their standard agreement that all the counties sign on to. I want to become part of the CERA group, so I don't have anything else to add to it.
What's your advantage of signing this?
I guess it's a vote on the board. So that way, they meet quarterly. We just had a meeting here three weeks ago. But like some of the things we were discussing, so we sent a letter to the state board about including a switch that basically merges all the different technologies together statewide, so we can all use the same system. But yeah, I mean, we still own, control the radio system. We're not giving them any of that, but it also allows us to go onto their system. So if we have an ambulance transfer to the University of Iowa, they can jump on the Johnson County radio system, or you know, Jasper County is part of it, Polk County is part of it. So if they went to Des Moines, or if our officers who go to law enforcement academy want to say to our dispatch center, hey, we're at the law enforcement academy, then we'll be able to hear that traffic from Des Moines. So.
Go ahead.
So if we don't join this, we can't talk to people?
Oh, we can still talk to people, yes. I don't know what the downside of not being on it is.
Okay, if the member guy is involved in, so they can't join this here, right? Because they're not has the Harris or the Rico, right?
Well, they have Harris radios, but the sheriff's department has joined my understanding that it's going to state. As far as the entire county of Marion, they have not decided. They're actually, I believe, hiring a consultant to look at it. I know, talking with Chief Okinski and Pella, you know, with the new tower rate there, their mobile or portable coverage is really good for just Impella, so they haven't decided which direction they're going to go.
So if we don't sign this agreement, does that put us in what they call a silo? Because I thought when we were talking about this earlier, we didn't want to be in a silo.
I can't foresee any of them saying we can't use their system even if we don't sign on to it. The idea was though that we would be part of the Sarah system going this direction. And this way it would open all that up for us.
Have you run this by a consultant at all?
I talked to Greg about it, he's not getting back to me, I did speak with Andrew about it, and Andrew noticed a lot of these people that are signing it are 911 boards, the communication leads themselves, not the counties. And so, I guess speaking with Andrew would be my recommendation, to just sit tight on this. Let's see how things work out. Who's supposed to be responsible for actually doing what in our county, and then they can decide if they want to be part of this or not. That's where I guess.
Well, I know that day there was, a couple EMAs that just signed it. I was like, yeah, I'm not just gonna sign it, I'll take it back to the county first.
Yeah, I'm not either.
It's gonna be, we're hoping to have it up and running by June of next year. And so I think all this stuff should be resolved by then. And so I guess it's my recommendation to, let's just sit tight, won't find no more than 6 or 8 months. Who's supposed to be doing what, and they can consider it. That'd be my recommendation. What board is supposed to be actually doing these responsibilities in our county.
Right, sounds good to me.
I do we table it then?
I agree.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second?
All in favor of just tabling it, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie. Eric? You got another meeting to be at, squeak it in here a minute.
Yeah, mine's pretty short and sweet. We had two people that came in wanting to build. One was wanting to build a shop, which is down in Evans. His property sits on a dead-end lane. It's actually a level C road. Mike Rodwell and I talked about him putting it there. We don't have any issues with the setbacks there because it wouldn't technically meet our requirements on setbacks in the county, but it's on a dead-end lane, C-level road. He's willing to rock the road himself and take care of it. So Mike and I would support a variance for him to put that closer to the edge of his property line. Because the back of his property, if you look at the picture, it backs up to a field on the back side of his property. So there's nobody gonna be building past him, and he's at the end of his level C road that he's willing to take care of himself. So our recommendation for Mike and I out of the county shop is at least to approve the variance so he can move forward and build his building on his lot there in Evans. That'd be the first one.
I do think it might matter as well, so he's supporting the variance.
Yep, okay, great. And then the second one is out on the Lacey pavement, right in Lacey. Carrie Lake has bought the second lot there. And if you look at the picture there on the second page, you'll see a house that has an X in it. He doesn't want to build over on his two lots to the right any further forward than existing houses up there through on Lacey pavement. So for him to have that 100-foot setback, you know, I don't see an issue with him bringing that further if it ends up being 60 or 70 feet, whatever it is on that other house, as long as he doesn't come past the front of the other one as well, so they stay in line on that road. We're fine with that one too. Mike and I have discussed it. We don't have any issues with that one either. So Mike and I both support those variances on that. But definitely go ahead and confirm that with Mike when you get a chance, but we don't see any issues or problems by giving them the variance to bring the properties further up.
Good confirmed.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, just talk to Mike, but
Okay.
I'd say it's not a problem for either one of us.
Sure.
All right?
Yep.
All right.
Thanks,
you,
Eric.
gentlemen. Yep.
Yep.
That, and then discussion with approval of tonight variances for 311 Evans Grant Street and 309 Broadway in Lacey.
Here for motion then?
Yes.
I move we allow the variance on, let's say it, on the 311th grant Evans Grant Street.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We have 309 Broadway in Lacey. Was an existing house there, was rebuilt. There's no issue with the line of sight, provision of driveway, or snow removal, or any other issues like that, so.
No strict snow drifting problems or anything you don't feel?
The engineers are approving it, and public health is approving it, so.
Okay. I make a motion, we approve the one in Lacey.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Eric. Okay, 9:15, time for a public hearing. This hearing is to consider request to establish, use, and maintain a shooting range known as Black Oak Place located at 143 on 80th Street, Section 9 in Black Oak Township. That request will be the motion to go to public hearing.
I move we go into public hearing on the Black Oak.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Now the public hearing. This is dealing with the establishment, use, and maintaining a shooting range known as Black Oak Place. And this is time to open for public comment. If you have comments, please come forward and sit in the chair and state your name and address and your thoughts, please.
Guess nobody else wanted to go first.
Okay, I'm Mark DeShadas, and I suppose everybody knows by now. I just got about a minute and a half here on a written page, so it won't be too long. A lot of these things have already been discussed, as on both sides have been discussed previously. We've lived at our location for 30 years and worked on our place and improved it for that period of time, and now we've got the shooting range that's come in the last several years, and we basically lost the quality of our life, and we had an intrusion of privacy into our home to the tune of 400 or 500,000 shots a year. And as I said before, when we had the airport coming into our area, these same people didn't want their privacy ruined, or their way of life, or their loss of property value, and they hired a lawyer to do such as to stop it. And now they're doing the same thing, and in our opinion, worse to the neighbors. Okay, at this point, we haven't seen a specific detailed plan for the range. It appears they don't want to file a plan because they want to get blanket approval. This way they can do whatever and continue to expand hours, days, and shots. And I feel that this is part of the idea of flooding the meeting with shooting people, is we don't get to the specifics of what the meeting is for. How a shooting range affects the people of Mahaska County and our neighbors. Now we know the range has offensive effects on approximately 20 homes in our area and have signatures as such. During the public hearing time here in the last month or two, the shooting has been way down as not to offend the neighbors. And in my opinion, this kind of shows that they know that it's offensive to the neighbors and don't want to rile it up during this period. Since we don't have any plan for the approval, we don't see how we have anything to agree or not to agree with. In my opinion, this is what the law is for, is to protect people from ruining their way of life and property values. And I feel the neighbors in Mahaska County need this protection. The old golden rule, do unto others as you've had them do unto you, applies in this situation. We're not trying to be mean to anybody. at all and take shooting away. This was supposed to be for the establishment and building of a shooting range, not to take something away from somebody else. And now that it's all done, it gets turned around, it's to where we are the people taking away something from somebody that's already been done. And that's not the way the law says, and that's not what's our intent. It was pushed on us into our neighborhood. And it's bad in our house. I mean, I don't know if you folks really realize what it's like. 20,000 shots on a Sunday, and you're sitting at your dinner table, and you're hearing that bang, bang, bang. Back into my house, there's a building, they got a metal building there, and the sound ricochets off that. I'm in my shower on the other end of my house, and I can hear the noise. I mean, if it was just a few shots, you know, guy go, oh, well, that's okay, you know, but all day, you know, it's just not right. Shouldn't be. Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jennifer Vandehorn. I live at 501 East Park Lane in Nicola. Thank you for hearing what we all have to say today. My son, Alec Vandehorn, is in his 4th year on the college shooting team. He has had a great amount of accomplishments and achievements under the coaching of Mike Vandehorn. He is a state champion many times over in speed and sporting plays, a national champion, and he's currently on the All-State and All-American team. And he's 5th in the nation for sporting plays. Without the use of Black Oak plays for practice and competition, none of this would have been possible. Well, it may not have been possible. And another point I would like to make is the amount of college scholarships that are available to the shooting sports. Alec and I know other athletes are working very hard to obtain these scholarships. And if they don't have a place to practice or compete, that could affect their future. And I just would like you to consider that when you're making a decision.
What time does your child shoot?
He goes to the 5:30 practice, usually. And he practices 3 times a week, and whenever he has the opportunity, he's shooting.
How long are the practices?
His dad takes him. It's usually, they're gone for an hour and a half, maybe, from the time they leave our house to the time they come home. So, so I would say an hour and 15 minutes, so, yes.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I know what, last meeting we talked about, we were gonna kind of get our ideas together and see what we want to do to propose information to either approve or deny it. So, if other comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Make a motion to close the hearing.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Do they have any thoughts on what they'd like to see for information-wise to approve or deny an application for the improvement of Black Oak Range shooting range?
I guess I got a couple of things that I question a little bit on the environmental side of the shooting. And I've mentioned it a couple times of what's gonna happen down the road when the lead's laying out there or wherever it's laying. And I think the Environmental Protection Agency has a best management plan, and I would like to see that followed. Just to make sure we improve, and I know if somebody puts builds a shop with a bathroom in it, they gotta go through our sanitation guy and get a permit and get everything permitted. I think this needs to kind of go down the same road, that we're not opening up a can of worms down the road that we can't. Because that, the county will be liable for.
I agree.
I mean, basically, Google starting the shooting range, that's the first thing that pops up every time I Google it. Follow all the national, state, and local regulations on all this stuff, so. Yeah, that is one I was looking at.
It was brought to my attention also. It's the EPA, United States Environmental Protection Agency, revised June 2005, Region 2. It's called Best Management Practices for Leaded Outdoor Shooting Ranges. And there's some contact information in here. I tried contacting the EPA, and that individual is not in. So I contacted the other Office of Waste Management. And that was his requirement that the applicant sign a document certification letter that the shooting range, the owner and operators will follow the best management practices for leaded outdoor shooting ranges. These are the regulations that the EPA puts out based off of case law. The EPA is and sued shooting ranges for and won the case in the law, so we call that case law, for the best trying to keep the lead out of the waters in the United States. So they said this is the regulations. So the feds do regulate this. I tried calling George Meyer at the compliance branch, Region 2, and he was not available or not in, so I called Ken Schuster, and the Office of Solid Waste, and spoke with him. So that was his recommendation. Any other ideas?
Does Andrew have anything to add?
I have enough.
Thanks.
Yeah, as I kind of said from the outset, what information you'd like to consider or need to have in order to consider approving the structure of the range is totally up in the board's discretion. I think it's a fair consideration if the structures are being used, obviously for shooting purposes, to consider the lead contaminants. As kind of Mark mentioned, if there's runoff water from this property that goes into a creek, that goes into a river, that eventually goes elsewhere, that would be regulated by the EPA. So that could be contaminants, and it could be very costly if that has to be cleaned up. So I think it's a fair consideration to ensure that the best management practices are being followed in terms of whether you want to improve these particular structures or not. So I think that's a fair point. I think other considerations the board should look at are the specific structures, precisely what structures are being sought for approval, the hours of operation for these specific structures, the current use of these structures, things like that. As you're aware, under the code, the shooting range is not only to seek approval for improvements to the property, such as bulwarks, things like that, but also when there's a substantial change in the use. So I think it's a fair consideration by the board to document what is the current use of the shooting range. Because if it's approved, if there is some question of whether there's been substantial change down the road, then at least there's some documentation as to what it was being used for at the time. And then, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we can see whether there needs to be another approval if there's, significant change, as like the geographic boundaries have changed, or it's many more structures on the property, or whatever. Just so the board can have a record in the minutes as to what is the current use of the property. So those are things I would recommend that the board consider as factors in determining whether they want to approve this particular range or not.
We had a conversation Friday. This is the list that I come up with our conversation. This was document the specific improvements the owner operator is running for a permit for. What is the intended use of the improvement? Document on aerial map the location of the improvement, proposed hours of the use, the shot used and distance traveled from improvement. We talked about this, the insurance company also wants this. Document the range safety officer, the rules and regulations concerning the improvements the range safety officer will enforce. And the certification letter of the EPA best management practices. And the EPA mentioned something to me, and we talked about a lot of cases they've ran into. They get into the cleanup and the regulations of this with the costs, the owners will just walk away and leave the county with the expense. And so, but the advice is to ask the owners of the property and operators to sign an indemnity agreement with the county. So, if something would happen, we have some assets that will fall back on to cover our expenses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if down the road, EPA says there's contamination on the property, and if that property taxes aren't paid, it's going to revert back to the county, and now the county, as owner of the property, is going to be stuck with the bill for cleaning it up. So to protect the county financially, it's my recommendation that the indemnity agreement, basically not just the LLC, but the owners of the land itself agree to indemnify the county, basically cover any costs that the county may incur as a result of having to clean up this property if and when there's some government mandated cleanup process. Because obviously you can imagine that won't be a cheap process if that in fact happens. So as long as the Black Oak Clays LLC and the actual owners of the land will put their assets up, basically saying we're going to be financially behind this, so that ultimately the county is going to pay what could be a very large bill if down the road they find that best management practices weren't followed, there's contamination aspects like that sort of thing.
After our last meeting, I made a few phone calls to the NRA organization, and the NRA actually helped write this. I know the NRA has a range book they encourage shooting ranges to follow. So, there's more information out there, but the range book is not mandated by law. The EPA is the one that's federally regulated by case law. So, just so this board knows, the NRA is not threatening a lawsuit against us. They're thinking about it.
Well, from the start, I said the first thing I got worried about was the county liability, so it sounds like this is kind of addressing that aspect of it.
Yes, obviously if best practice is being followed, that would obviously diminish the potential for cleanup costs and things like that. That being said, it probably won't be cheap to follow the best management practices, because some of that is reclamation of lead and that sort of thing on the property, which may not be a cheap process. But if you don't do that, it can be much more expensive down the road. It's kind of one of those things where an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure, sort of thing. So that, I think, should at least be addressed, because it could impact the county financially if this contaminant does get into waterways in the U.S. and that sort of thing. So yeah, I would say in general, the things that the board may consider or should least consider as relevant information as to whether to approve the specific structures of the property, would be the use, the safety, and finally the kind of environmental impact, those kind of three areas. So, I think just what kind of Mark talked about, those specific factors kind of fall into that umbrella. And what to do. And again, as I said before, to tailor the approval to specific structures themselves, because that's what the code talks about, the physical improvements. So I think that's what needs to be very specific in the application.
The insurance company in the NRA both said, talk about a range safety officer and the rules and regulations will be enforced. Do you see anything over that would need for the safety of the county or the individuals using the range that would really classify liability?
Well, I believe if the owners and operators agree to follow best management practices as part of the application process, and also agree to indemnify the county against any potential lawsuits for safety accidents or whatever, if they would come back to the county for some reason, I think that's fine. I wouldn't have any particular concerns, but again, just to kind of underscore, it has to be more than just the LLC, right? Because a lot of these times, there are independent companies set up that don't really have a lot of assets, right? So if there's a lawsuit, the LLC really has no assets to pay out of, that, they'll foreclose on the LLC, but then who pays the bill, right? So that's why there has to be assets that back up the indemnity agreement, because it basically is not really worth much if there's no assets behind it. So that's why, in my view, it should not only just be the LLC, but the landowners, whoever that is, as well. So they're have a financial interest in ensuring that these things are done to kind of protect the county from later judgments.
The EPA did inform me that they will go after the operator first, the landowner second, and the county third. I think this is the cleanup. They've had cases where the individual find the cost of the cleanup, they just stop paying the property taxes, therefore reserves back to the county. The county's now dealing with the EPA to clean up the mess. So, for environmental issues.
Yeah, and I think that concern obviously is heightened the more the use occurs, right? The more lead that's being shot out on the land, the more this becomes an issue. So it could be, I mean, I don't know from experience, but it could be that this maybe isn't an immediate issue because of the use, but if the use increases even more, obviously, then it becomes a more important issue to look at. So I think it's better to address it now than down the road.
And the bigger the area, the bigger the cost. Because you look at the range book, they give ways of designing things where you're shooting more into one area for a centralized location cleanup. So when there's ways of that. Either way, it's got to be cleaned up. It's just a matter of the area that needs to be done.
And you can limit your liability so much, you can't eliminate it all. What happens if this property would happen to change hands 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road? Does all this paperwork go with the new owner then, or?
That's an excellent question. I would probably put in the approval that it's only approving for this particular owner. And if it passes to somebody else, then that, whoever that is, would also then have to seek approval. Because arguably there'd be a substantial change in the shooting range, where now you have a different operator, they may have different hours, different types of games or whatever, that needs to be reapproved at that point. Yeah, because like you said, I mean, if they get out and they're no longer connected to it, then
Well, I look at it as an out-of-state buyer maybe comes in, he says, Mike says, okay, I've had enough, or whatever, he decides to do something else, get an out-of-state buyer that don't really have any skin in the game in the local area, he ain't gonna worry about it. Probably, you know what I mean, he needs to be held to the same rules as what we come up with in the first agreement.
yeah, well, absolutely, I think that's an absolutely fair point. So, yeah, I think probably the most conservative route would just be to say that approval only lasts up until the time that there's a change of ownership. And at that point, that's considered a substantial change in the property. Therefore, it needs to be reapproved, the whole site.
I think we ought to have a time limit on the application too. So, what do you feel? Do you feel there ought to be a time limit on the application?
Well, yeah, I think there should be a reasonable period of time to allow the applicant to collect whatever information the board requests, right?
Right.
So the more you're requesting of the applicant, the more time there should be allowed to fulfill that request, right? So it really is a function of how much you're going to be asking them to do, so they can kind of get their ducks in a row. There's no point in setting a very, small window that you can't really get the documents.
Right.
What's the point of that, you know what I mean? So it's really kind of subject to what you're asking them as to what would be reasonable.
Right.
But yeah, I think there should be some time frame,
Yeah.
which, you can collect the documents.
I just don't want them in 5 years saying we're almost there,
Yeah.
so to speak, so.
Well, absolutely. I think everyone wants to have a resolution one way or the other.
Right.
As to what the board decides. And then, you're gonna have to figure out if the application is incomplete or insufficient, then what the board's gonna do at that point with such application.
What do you think is appropriate time, 60 days?
Well, I don't think yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the board has actually decided on what they want the applicant to produce. I know we've talked about a few things, but I think once you have that list, and maybe you can do it now, I'm not sure, but once you have that list, then I think you can come up with a reasonable time frame. Because if for some reason you want some sort of expert opinion on certain things or whatever, if there's other people that are gonna have to get involved, or you're requesting get involved, I think then more time would be necessary. But if you're not looking for that sort of information, it could be a lot quicker. You see what I'm saying? So I would say that the wiser route would be first decide what you're looking for, and then you can decide how long it takes to fulfill what you're looking for. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And that's kind of what this list that Mark, you I think kind of come up with, and Mark came up with, kind of what we're looking at, don't you feel, Mark?
That's what, yeah. It was our intention to come up with what we needed for a permit.
Right.
And so after our conversation with Andrew Friday, this is what I drafted, and I didn't know if you guys had more or less. I mean, this is just the information I've received, what the feds require, and
Have you talked to a public health individual on this?
not in detail.
You should have left him, too. Maybe you don't want to comment on it. You know anything about this stuff, Eric?
A little bit, just for the lead reclaiming of the lead. I mean, there's vegetative life. There's a lot of lists. If you guys decide to go with EPA guidelines, I mean, there is a list of guidelines in there that they have to provide. So
Okay, that's what I was looking for, some kind of structure of what they need.
if that's the route you guys choose, yeah, there's a whole list in there. I mean, yeah, anybody can print it off and you can find that information.
Okay.
To me, the EPA is kind of a relevant choice. They're gonna force it to be mandated and followed either whether we certify it followed or not. It's just better. Sorry, if you want to come here to join us, because I know everyone else had a hard time hearing you, but.
That's all right. I mean, yeah, like I said, if you're coming from the environmental side, yeah, that'd be my recommendation, is to look up the EPA guidelines, look what they ask for your vegetative life, all your waterways, your habitat. Look at what the reclaiming of the lead and steel shot is. I mean, those are the biggest things that EPA looks at.
Those are gonna be enforced by the county.
Correct, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter whether we set down and set up a whole list of ordinances that they're gonna have to follow or not. Those are all EPA, those are federal guidelines, not ours.
We're just bringing to the attention that they can follow what they were doing.
That's all, yeah. Yeah, that's all I was doing.
Are we allowed to talk to Mr. Vandermoor at this time?
That's do, it's fine, maybe I do.
So what are your intentions for this black rose? You gonna grow it, or?
You probably should come up here so we
Yeah,
can compare.
I know that'd be
Yeah.
good, have
Yeah.
Mark come up.
Are you talking about relevant in relation to your, what we're Rachel are requesting, or?
Yeah, just hours of use, and, you know, expand it to a very big deal, or what? It's kind of like to know what his intentions are.
Okay, I just don't say, I don't know, if this is relevant information to the permit,
Yeah, would be.
okay.
Right now, our intentions are just like we've been the last couple of years. We don't have any intentions of having an everyday open to the public range. It's when we have our scheduled events, scheduled practice time, nothing different than we have been doing.
you took any consideration of the neighbors' complaints?
Yeah, and we have, I've actually talked to a couple of neighbors that have been up here, you know, that have had concerns. A lot of it's been misinformation, but a lot of it, you know, we have laid out our shooting stations as to not be necessarily shooting towards anybody's residence, to cut down on any noise, because anytime you shoot a certain direction, obviously it's going to be louder that direction than if you shot the other direction. Like I said, when we designed the range back there, you know, we're surrounded in every direction by either hills or large trees, and that also helps cut down on noise. All of our minimum distances were either double or 2.5 times the minimum distance required, you know, from any residence. I personally don't think you can have a shooting range or shoot anywhere in the state of Iowa and not have somebody be able to hear you in the distance. It just depends on, you know, how far away you are. Like I said, I've been to numerous places to shoot in the last many years, and I've literally had houses right across the street from where you're shooting. I realize that, you know, not all situations are like that, but a lot of them are. So.
Yeah, I spoke with the DNR and NRA, and both of them were kind of in agreement that every within 3/4 of a mile of here inside their house. It's just the way it is. The NRA believes most laws are set up to protect the shooting range once it's established, for people moving in, getting closer from lawsuits. The NRA did it for me. There is federal regulations, Constitution. I didn't detail the NRA about noise or nuisance lawsuits. We talked about the discussion of the Iowa Code, saying the interpretation of some that they want to get permission to shoot in the range for no noise or noise nuisance lawsuits, and there's always the option. There's always the NRA informed there's always civil lawsuits. I gave an example of shooting 605 feet away from a cattle feedlot where all of a sudden the cattle get crazy, and so there'll be civil liabilities and instances like that. They did tell me that you can't, a shooting range in one part of our county could look totally different than the opposite of our county. It's just the location, what's around it, and anything else. So there's no cookie cutter formula for what location is for each one. Both the DNR and the NRA said it's very, very common to limit the hours of what a shooting range can be used.
So you're saying the supervisors could put a limit on the hour you use?
Yes.
They basically left it wide open that we could do about what we think we need to do. Ain't it? Will you read it that way?
That's not really because
Yeah.
it's an ordinance, a resolution. I mean, so I'm just telling you the information that I've received from the state agency and the NRA. And so the NRA did affirm that this is not a Second Amendment issue. So the NRA is one that did tip me off that there is federal regulations to be followed. So.
I think that's basically what our application needs to say, is this is what needs to have a plan in place, and then.
Well, I guess I'm looking even down the road of what are we gonna, if someone else comes to us 3 months from now or next year, what would this board require for information? And so I guess I'm just trying to build a list of what would be on file if someone comes in and say this is the information we request to start. You know, just like planning and zoning, they have a list of what's required for information, that's where they start. Unfortunately, Planning and Zoning Commission can do a lot of stuff behind the public, where it's all done and settled before it comes to the public board for agreement or design.
Right.
So I guess I was thinking long term of this list being on file of what is required now. Given the EPA with more court cases and everything else, I'm sure that's probably going to be revised more. It's just the way things work. I'm sure the NRA could keep revising their shooter's manual. You know, some states require, some states, it's in the code that they follow the NRA shooter's manual. It's not an Iowa. Following federal regulations is not an option for states, it's just they made that federal, so.
So we just basically need to get Mike an application that you can fill out.
I think we gotta come up with a list of what we wanna see in this application,
Right.
and then we'll move forward from there.
That's what I'm asking, do you feel this is what we need in an application?
Well, speaking with Andrew, yes.
Yeah.
Unless you guys have more or less, I mean,
I'm
it's up
just
to
trying
you
to move
guys.
it ahead here.
Yeah, I think we need to decide on this today, what we wanna see, so Mike has something to move forward to.
Right, and he knows what direction he has to go.
Yes. We had 3 hearings, always had time to public comment,
Yep.
on things. We made it clear last meeting that he's gonna try and do this after this public hearing.
Right. That's the way I understood it anyway.
So,
I'm just trying to do what I said.
right, and that's why I said, I think the public had option to comment on all this, on this information. You as a gun operator, do you have anything else you'd like to see as a permit?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I guess I'd look at what other ranges are required to do. I don't know if any of them have to have a shot plan, range plan, other than government-owned ones.
I think that's basically to make sure that their safety rules being followed. You're talking about the range master?
Yeah, like well, I'm certified RSO, and many of the people that actually coach out of our range are also range certified safety officers, if that's what you're asking.
The insurance company, I'm thinking, I have to go through all my notes, state agency and the NRA. Shoot, but I'll recommend a range safety officer and the rules that they follow on the range, make sure that everyone's gonna stay safe.
Correct, and that's what a range safety officer does.
And so that's what the insurance company recommended. I think all the NRA, the state agencies, I mean, everybody I talked to says that's the main. And I think you've given us a lot of that information in the package you provided already.
Correct,
And
yes.
so I think that just enforces, takes the liability out of the county that we didn't even know there's gonna be safety rules and regulations to follow. So if someone does get hurt, we can come back and say, well, the rules didn't follow.
Correct.
So. So I guess that's from speaking with everyone, the county attorney, that's what I come up with is what specific improvements is the owner operator wanting a permit for? What is the intended use of the improvement? I'd like to see documented on an aerial map the location of the improvement, proposed hours of the use, the shot used, the distance traveled from the improvement. That's more to cover, this is out of our league, so I'm not.
Well, that stuff's all, I mean, I can give you that information probably now on all that stuff. And I actually think that Gene Osco, the one that sent you guys the report on the inspection, referred to a lot of that stuff in there as well.
We just need it so you guys sign off on it, so if something travels farther, it's on someone else's property or someone gets injured farther away from that, it wasn't permitted by us,
The
so.
EPA comes in and says, boys, you know, we're just trying to limit the liability to the
Sure.
county. So, and the other thing I would like to see happen is that somebody else don't start running it, say, well, he approved his after he already started. You know what I mean? We're trying to head this off, that this is exactly what you gotta do to build a shoot.
And a lot of those things with the lead, most ranges, I'm gonna call them high use ranges. Minimal use ranges like us, it's, a lot of times it's not feasible in so many years to do a reclamation process. It has to be further down the road. They'll go in and they'll mine that lead, they'll reclaim it, and it's considered a scrap metal. That's what lead is considered on range, a scrap metal, because it can be reclaimed. So, and there's, some of those ranges make pretty good money when it doesn't cost them, they make good money when they have that lead reclaimed, because they get paid so much a pound.
Just to finish my list of documents, the range safety officer, the rules and regulations concerning the improvements, the range officer will enforce. Certification letter drawn up by Mahaska, that the owner of the property and the operator will follow UP's best management practices for men outdoor shooting ranges. And the owner of the property and operator will sign an indemnity agreement with the county. And since this is more than a variance, you mentioned earlier, you got on there, on this one, the year was already established. So that's the conversation we had between the NRA, the state, and everybody has spoke with the recommendations. It's up to this entire board when we do that. We're just trying to figure out what our responsibilities are in all this.
Well, basically, we gotta see what his application's filled out before we can move ahead, to me.
Right, so if you want something else in the permit application, we need to discuss it now, I think.
Not unless somebody else does, no, I think this pretty much covers what I think we need, so.
And who's, I guess, we've been talking the skeet fields, because that really, to me, is the only thing that qualifies under any kind of property improvements, and that's even kind of a gray area. So, are you guys gonna tell us what are the property improvements that we're here for sure, or are we just gonna say it's the two skeet fields?
I was gonna leave it up to you. You tell us what you want permitted for.
You're the one that got me here.
We're just gonna follow the code. You know, if you don't think there's nothing to be permitted for, I'd walk away from it. You know, you look at the NRA told me anytime you spend money, they would call it an improvement.
Yeah, but that's not what the Iowa law says. That's what the NRA says.
But, is it 481, whatever it is? I'm sorry, the code number, but it says 600 feet within the inhabited building, or 600 feet, or 600 feet from an inhabited livestock facility. I look at the inhabited livestock under under code 4, it doesn't even mention beef or pork. It just says emus and some oddball thing, but yet the DNR regulates livestock and pork. So, until there's court case law, everybody's up to their own interpretation. Because the DNR doesn't even agree with shooting within 600 feet of a nuisance lawsuit. I'm just telling you what the DNR is at either. And what the enforcement lawyers say, that's another thing. But
That person's opinion is different from the next one.
so until we get a court that interprets what their opinion of the code is, everyone's kind of sitting for right now yet.
Well, I guess you guys have to come up with a list, and we'll have to take a look at it.
Yeah.
If that's the next step that you want to take.
I think it's basically our list, right?
Yeah, but it's up to you guys too. That's just,
It's fine with me, I guess, is it fine with you, Steve, or doing something
I'm
else?
just a little concerned about the neighbors in their area. I think there needs to be something. Like they're not shooting every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, all year long. And you cut it off for some time at night.
Well, we don't shoot all year long.
I understand,
Don't shoot
just,
every weekend.
but
But that's,
all during the summertime and stuff like that. Just feel that somebody lived there for 30-some years and they were there ahead of the thing. They shouldn't lose that. I have a hard time justifying that. I think your program is great. Kids love it. I got a grandson, she's from Oskaloosa. It's great. But that's my biggest concern.
and nobody I've talked to complaining to me about the kids shooting or the night practices, it's mainly the Sundays. The Sundays is all I've heard about, so. Don't know what the solution to that is, but, nobody wants to not see the kids be able to shoot and practice and succeed in their sport. And, there's a lot of them would like their Sundays quiet. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing at the coffee shops and every time I go to McDonald's or wherever. So,
Yeah, I think we have a total of 7 of those throughout the year. That's what we had last year, that's what we have scheduled this year.
On Sundays?
They don't start before 8 o'clock, usually 9 o'clock. There's only 2 of them that start at 8, and it's only because of logistics. Otherwise, it started at 9 o'clock, usually done by 5.
We just keep that in consideration, the neighbors. I'm good with the list to start with.
we need a motion. I think what the motion is what we want from the application. So we have to type that and available. Then, I think we need to set a timetable to where Mr. Van Look may decide he wants to move forward from there, or we're not interested.
And that'll be on the application.
Correct.
Yep.
That's the way I would do it.
Yep. We're just basically voting to move ahead with the application. We're gonna fill it out and give it to him.
We're voting on what we want to see,
Right.
the documentation for the permit
If
application.
you choose not to fill it out, then it's an incomplete application.
You know, it's no different than the, we're gonna go through it here, but actually paper. No different than the state of Iowa having an application for a liquor license.
Yep.
And then tell the information you fill out. This is the same thing we're asking.
Yep.
We want this information for us to consider.
Yeah, that's what I understood it.
Every year then, that application?
Just if, but if you want to make another improvement, then I think we gotta go through that again.
For anybody.
Yeah, anybody.
Just not like a liquor license, it's be every year, 2 years, whatever it is.
As long as there's no change, I do not believe so, no.
Okay.
That's the way I understand it.
You understand anything different, Andrew?
No, the code talks about when there is an improvement or a substantial change. So if there's no change in the use of the facility, no additional structure, that sort of thing, I don't see why the board would have to keep reapproving the shooting range.
I make a motion, we come up with an application for Mike to look at and fill out.
Moving on.
What we got on this paper here, all these steps you just went through.
Is there a motion to, I just want to clarify, so it's clear. You want to see on the permit application, a specific improvements is the owner operator wanting a permit for, what is the intended use of the improvement, talking about an aerial map, the location of the improvement, proposed hours of the use of the improvement, shot used and distance traveled from improvement, document the range safety officer, the rules and regulations concerning the improvements the range safety officer will enforce, a certification that are drawn by Mahaska County that the owner of the property and the operator will follow the EPA's best management practices for related outdoor shooting ranges, and the owner of the property and operator will sign an indemnity agreement with Mahaska County. That's to make sure we're on the same page.
I would like to add where you've got hours of use and dates of events.
And that's going to change every year. I guess I expected just to say Monday through Wednesday,
Okay.
such hours, Tuesday through Friday, Thursday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever hours are.
Okay.
Just have it documented.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was wanting, so.
And as I kind of mentioned before, what you may want to consider, again, if there's a substantial change in use down the road, you need to know what the current use is. So, documentation as to how many events are being held and.
That's what I was trying to comment on.
Yeah,
so-
something that at least clarifies how it's currently being used. So if down the road there's, 50 more events, let's say hypothetically, then at least in my mind, that's substantially changing what you're doing. So it's good to have that in the application, so a future board down the road can compare what the current use is then and what the past use is now, to figure out if there's a substantial change or not. So that kind of documentation would probably be helpful for a future board, and kind of perhaps the geographical limits of what the shooting range is, you see what I'm saying? Because if, for more land is purchased down the road, it's, enlarged geographically, that may also be something important to the board down the road would like to know. So documenting that sort of thing perhaps would be helpful.
Proposed hours of use and proposed number of events.
Yep.
Okay. Kind of do this backwards, get a motion on the table, we kind of add to it as we
I
go,
know.
so.
You want me to withdraw the first one and add another one?
I like
I'll
it.
withdraw
I like
the
it.
first one, we'll do another one.
Okay.
I just thought of it after you read through it again. I'm done thinking, go ahead.
So is there any motion on the table? You've withdrawn your first one.
Yep.
There's no
I would
motion
just
on the
like to
table.
add to this list the number of events per year. Under the same section as hours of operation.
Yeah. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Support.
We have a motion on the table, on the floor, to accept this list of information as information needed for permit application. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving this list as a permit information required? Before we move forward with this, we want to set a timetable since we've already got a permit application on the table.
I want 120 days. Is that enough time, you think, to get what you need?
Have most of it already, yeah, I think so.
It's 4 months.
Huh?
That's plenty, I think.
You can cut it down if you want.
I think 90 days.
So I make a motion. You made a motion 120?
I would do it.
Now, let-
I don't care, as soon as he gets it done,
I've
we're
not
gonna
heard a
run it
second, I've not
through.
heard a second on 120
I
yet,
ain't
so.
either. It died.
I'd like to keep it going, I'll make a motion. We add to this list, we have 60 days to receive it, the applicant will fill his application, or you guys just what's going on.
Support.
So, the motion to add the 60 days, I make a motion to add the 60 days. The motion of this list required for information, permit. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
So we have a motion on the table to have this information within 60 days to consider permit. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Email that to me, or that list, or?
Yes, I can. You want to, I think I have your email address. You emailed it to me before, correct?
Yep.
Okay. I'll do that. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Approved Mahaska employee plan and rates for fiscal year 19 for 20. Okay, let's take a recess. Very good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Who knows when, maybe soon, maybe a while.
All right.
You enjoy.
Moving forward to our agenda. We've had some concerns with our healthcare plan. I know Brad and I have been working on it for quite a long time. We need to approve the Mahaska County employee health plan rate for fiscal year 12. We're going from a 2-person payer system to a 4-tier system. So, to employee with children, employee spouse, and employee with family rates. Change the credit card co-pays, and the emergency room visits is the main thing. And we are, and it's talking about moving the vision from the plan altogether. So. Yeah, it will increase the out-of-pocket too as well. So.
we're gonna have an open enrollment period, right?
Correct.
Brad's gonna come down and put a meeting on for anybody with any questions, right?
We're trying to talk to them to come down for a couple, 2 or 3 hours for any questions, to explain the new program. So, we will get an enrollment period proposed before it takes effect July 1. They're going to have to reapply. So this is the recommendation for the health carrier.
I know we've worked on it a lot, trying to get a better solution than we got. So far, we ain't found one, so I don't think we have any choice.
At this point, I don't think we do either. So, I'll make the motion to approve the Mahaska County employee health plan rates for fiscal year 20.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Need to set a date for public hearing for fiscal year 19 budget amendment. I'm suggesting we propose May 20, which is our next meeting, at 9 o'clock a.m. for the first time.
I move we set the hearing date for the budget amendment for 19 at May 20th, 2019 at 9 o'clock. That's our meeting.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The liquor license to approve for the Interville Raceway, it's Class B application. This is a renewal.
I move we approve the liquor license Class B for Adeville Raceway Park.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the liquor license, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The last work session, the Sprout Board members, they would, consider or thought of starting an entire new board again, talk about mitigation for 220th Street. 20 members, a member from our board, member from Sprout Board, member from both cities. So, thoughts, want to go forward with that? Satisfied with all of that, what we decided already?
I'm satisfied with what we got. I think we give them a plan they need to follow coming from our engineering department. I don't see the purpose of another board.
Totally agree.
Public comments? Seeing none, entertain motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.